Good evening and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker-Hagan, and I'm so delighted to be back with you this evening. My co-host, Dr. J.R. Thickenland, is out getting some much needed rest. And Dr. J, I hope you are getting that rest because you know you're hard-headed, but I miss you on tonight. Tonight I have a special guest, Mayor Ken Thurston. He's joining me live tonight. Mayor Thurston, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Dr. Val, thank you so much for inviting me to your great program.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. I know your schedule is very hectic and you're busy because you're running for reelection for the city of Lauderhill. How long have you been mayor there?
Uh, 3.5 years. And prior to that, I was the city commissioner uh, for 8 years. The total time that you get to serve is 12 years.
Oh, okay. Well, we're looking forward to you serving all 12 years.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The election is November the 8th. And when I'm elected, I'll be able to serve 2 years. And
Okay.
with that, term limit says that there'll need to be a new mayor after 2024.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're looking forward to you being reelected and holding that seat. There's been some changes. We went through the pandemic, and now, in light of mental health month, what are
Yeah.
some things that you see that are going on in the city that you are trying to implement?
Well, unfortunately, due to COVID, many of our residents in the city of Lauderhill, which has 75,000 people, have been negatively impacted by the COVID pandemic. There were always the families, the heads of household were working two jobs, trying to make it. Then COVID set in, and the incidences of mental health challenges increased. I spoke with the police chief today, Police Chief Constance Stanley, and she said that over the last 2 years, the number of people who've gone into crisis has increased exponentially, and it's been necessary. People have had to be Baker acted. The number of people who have gone along the line of committing suicide has increased.
Yes.
It is a tough time on everybody, and the city has been about the business of trying to help improve the quality of life for its citizens by helping businesses get those PPP loans, which
Hmm.
help to make their payroll, helping people find jobs by hosting job fairs, um, providing grants to businesses so that they could stay in business. And it's all about trying to help people survive through this very difficult period.
Yeah, you just said elections in November. How important is it for individuals to get to the polls?
Well, it absolutely is, and it's been said that elections have consequences.
Mm,
And as we look at what's happening in the state of Florida and the nation as a whole, and Lauderhill in particular, elections have consequences. Um, if you don't like some of the negative things that are happening in your community, your state, and your country, you need to vote and and elect good people who have the moral character that you'd like to see expressed in public office.
yeah. You're the mayor for the city of Lauderhill. It's a part of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County. And I've often talked about in the show about demographics and the monies in the communities. How important is it for individuals to vote for, mayor and commissioners? And can you speak on how that affects our community financially.
Well, the people who are in office get, and for the city commission, get to determine the budget of the city.
Mhm.
That budget determines the frequency of how often your garbage is going to be picked up. It determines the speed at which the fire department is going to get to you. If you need a paramedic, the budget that the elected officials have made determine how quickly they'll get to you to provide aid. So voting for the right people is extremely important. Now, we had the incident today in Texas where at least 14 people were killed, and I
Well,
heard a late
14 and a teacher.
and a teacher, and I heard a report about 15 minutes ago that the death toll has increased up to
Oh, wow.
18. And
Jesus.
and it's those elected officials who determine the gun laws. There really ought to be um, a method by which people who are dangerous, they've been stable, then all of a sudden they become unwrapped for some reason. There ought to be a way of taking the guns away from a person who's going through emotional and mental upheaval to protect themselves and to protect the community. So that is up to your local officials to make those decisions. That's why voting for the right person is so terribly important.
Okay. Is there something particular that you are planning on implementing or have implemented during your reign?
Well, I, along with several other mayors, well, filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida. State of Florida has said that uh, city commissioners cannot control who has guns. We cannot control the types of guns. We cannot control getting a background check on a person before they buy a gun. So, myself, along with several other mayors, have filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida, and we've won the first round. And but the lawsuit is working its way through the state supreme court, and we hope to be successful. And that's why having the right person in office is so important. I can't say that having a gun in your home is a bad thing. I'm not saying that. Many people feel more confident with the ability to protect themselves. But people who are have shown erratic behavior, who are obviously mental ill, the gun should be taken away from them until they become stable.
Yeah. But there are a lot of individuals that have mental illness and they're bipolar, which is a method of mental illness, and they can talk circles around you where you would actually believe they were sane. I know individuals that are bipolar that have been Baker acted, and they talk themselves out of the facility because I think when you're Baker acted, you do either 3 days or 30 days, depending on how they evaluate you. But the maximum is 30 days. And they have been able to talk themselves out and even have sessions in the institution where their people are actually listening to them and think they're sane.
Well, let's hope that we've got trained mental health professionals in our facilities, and that during that 3 day Baker Act, the psychologists and psychiatrists are able to identify those people who should not be out walking with us at this time until they become mentally stable. But there's got to be a method of helping that person by sitting them down, giving them the opportunity to get back to their normal self, without hurting others. Uh, the individuals who've committed most of the mass murders that we have identified, there was mental health issues,
Yes.
untreated mental health issues. So that's why it's so important to get help for these people, and that's why the right elected official in office is important.
Yeah, I was looking at the statistics for mental health for our young people, and unfortunately, more than half of young adults, their insurance doesn't cover mental illness, so they become untreated. So you have, like, if there's, say, 50 million people, throwing out a number, that have been diagnosed with mental illness, and imagine half of them don't have insurance. So they're walking around, wreaking havoc because they're not able to get the help that they need.
Well, Dr. Val, you are absolutely correct. We need to be certain that the health insurance plans provide the ability for people to get mental health. And if your heart or liver can become sick, your brain can
Your
become sick.
brain can become sick. Yes, indeed.
And it needs to be treated. So I would hope that we would advocate for mental health and mental illness as a treatable malady under a health insurance policy. And I think that the community is safer if there is the ability to promptly get mental health treatment when it's needed.
Yeah, it is definitely needed across the board, across the US. I have with us in studio Carla Saunders. She's with Shyne Productions. She was on our show last week, and I thought it would be awesome for her to come back because she has a wealth of information. Carla, good evening. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to come back. You've heard Mayor Thurston talking, and do you have anything you want to chime in to say regarding the conversation we're having? And particularly, the news said that, when I was looking at the news, I didn't turn on the news till about 6 o'clock, and I saw it, and I had already posted the show this morning, so this had already was
Mm.
it getting ready to take place, and our children are in crisis.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Our
yes.
children are in crisis. I mean, I know that a lot of it stems from depression. There's so many children that are depressed. We used to always focus on the older people, like, saying that they were going through depression and stuff, but we have more children going through depression than adults now.
Yes. And I do agree with the right people in office. That is so important. If we don't have the right people in office, we don't have a voice to fight for us, to put the right laws, for us to follow. Um, when he said that the number had increased, it just my heart, because I'm a mom and I can just imagine um, the state of our children. It's important. We always shield our children. I'm one that shield my children from things, and I think about the students that are alive that had to experience that.
Yes.
We shield them, but we can't overly shield them. And I say that because if we don't talk to them and we just kind of cover them up and act like it didn't happen, we don't know what's going on in their minds. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know, if inside they're hurting. So that is, so important. And the parents, and as a parent, you send your child off to school and you expect to see them later. So for them to not, to all of a sudden they don't have their child, it is so important. This mental health thing is serious. And it's not, they deal with stuff that we haven't had to deal with. They've gone from regular school to shut down to then back to school, and then wearing masks. That's a whole different thing that we haven't had to experience before. Now our kids having to experience that, but we're having to experience it with them. How do we navigate? How do we deal with the challenges of our kids, you know, having to think, what's going to happen to me next? Do I go to school? How do I go to school? Is this person beside me, are they sane, or will somebody come into our schools? And just being mindful. It is so important. So it is important that we teach them. One of the things that as a adult, it was taught active shooter. I was taught that in a job that when someone comes in, and now the kids are being taught that now, to be careful, to be, in a closet and all these different things. And, I just think it is so important. These laws, these, um, individuals that are in charge, what do we do now? I was looking at, Senator Chris Murphy as he was on the floor, and he was, very passionate about, what do we do?
What do we do?
What do we do? And that is a serious question. What do we do? And I like, what Mayor Thurston said, laws taking away the guns, evaluating. There has to be some, signs that have been seen. As a parent, do we check for our kids? Do we sit down? Do we notice different behaviors and changes? Because there are changes, and there are signs.
Well, there certainly are. And I talked to my police chief this afternoon, and one of the things she wanted me to stress is that when you see something, say something.
Say
Yes.
something. I was about to say that.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
that friends or relatives knew that this person's behavior had changed,
Hmm.
and that they were different,
Mhm.
and were a threat to themselves or others. And you think, well, they'll get better. No, you can't take that chance.
That's right.
You need to say something to the authorities so that they can investigate. And if the person has weapons, the way that so many of these mass killers have had, take the weapons away from them for their own protection and for the protection of the community.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
but the thing is, okay, you're saying take the weapons away, but a lot of times we don't know the weapons exist until they come out and go full blast and do something like what they've done today. And it's just heartbreaking. I just I'm lost for words. I don't know. I know that it can't be fixed overnight. It
Right.
cannot be fixed overnight, but we've got to do something.
Well,
And what do you think that something should be?
Well, I think that we need to do background checks before people get the guns,
mhm.
a universal background check. We're not proposing to take away the ability of the person to have a firearm to protect themselves. But if an individual has been involved in violence with a gun in the past, if there is a history of threats and mental illness, we ought to take a solid look at that person. So a serious universal background check is the first thing that ought to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
And unfortunately, the gun lobby, the National Rifles Association, has blocked that kind of legislation being passed. When Sandy Hook happened and all of those kids were killed, um, President Obama talked about passing the right legislation. He gave it to Congress, and the gun lobby lobbied and prevented it from being passed. So here we are. We've gone mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, and all we're giving is thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers is what all of the national politicians are giving us, and they ought to be giving us sound legislation which will protect kids in particular and ourselves in general. That's what we need: solid legislation to protect us from people who really shouldn't have guns.
Mhm. I'd like to submit that we need to take inventory of our homes.
Absolutely.
It begins in the home. These kids that have these guns that go out killing and shooting, they came from somebody. They had a mother, they had a father, they came from someone. We have to take inventory of who's in our home and what they are doing in our homes. We need to pay attention to their when they're doing their schoolwork. I know parents are busy. I was a busy parent, but I still took time to invest into my child's well-being mentally to find out what was going on with them, and you can only do that if you have a conversation. Now, passing them in the hallways while you going to work and on your way to bed is not having a conversation. How was school? Oh, it's okay. How's your grades? The grades are good. No, you need to have a conversation with your child to find out where they are mentally. There are so many kids, as I stated at the top of the show, that are depressed, and they're in their parents' home and their parents have no idea they're depressed, mostly because they're depressed themselves.
I agree.
But it starts in the home. We have to take inventory. And we have kids that are going that have graduated and they're getting ready to go off to college. We need to have some real conversations with them. My granddaughter did her first year, and she's doing her thing. And I said to her, I said, "How's school?" She said, "It's good, Nan. I'm doing real good." And I said, "I understand you've been doing a lot of hanging out and partying." She says, "I'm in college." I said, "College has nothing to do with you hanging out and partying." I said, "We sent you to school to get an education. Remember where you came from." And she was like,
Absolutely.
"I remember where I came from." I said, "Yeah, but hanging out, partying, and drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana, that don't have nothing to do with I'm a college student." No, 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 no.
Agreed.
We have to
Agreed.
have real conversations. And
Absolutely.
I'm here to tell you, I'm the message that I bring. I'm going to talk about it to, the children and stuff in my family and my friends' children. When they ask me to talk to their kids, I'm going to have real conversations with them. Alcohol does not drown out reality.
No.
That is
Marijuana does not drown out reality. Pull back the layers. What's going on? Why do you feel the way you feel? Because if we don't invest in our home and find out what's going on, they could be that young man that slaughtered those people today.
yes. It's just important. I'm going to say I I do some different things for my kids, and that is I check book bags. I go through phones. I check and see what's going on. I have different conversations, and each one of my kids take time with them individually. We have family time, but I have individual time with my
Yep.
kids just to find out what you're thinking about, what's going on, what happened today. Did anything happen? Because I have a daughter, two sons. Everybody's different. No
Yes.
one's the same. Everybody's going to be different. Everybody has a different way of handling and dealing with things. Just as we are adults, we deal with things differently. And we have to start asking questions. I love my oldest son that lives with me, my oldest biological son, because I have other kids. um, and he makes it a point, Mom, we got to sit down. Let's have family dinner. And he'll come to the house and he'll cook, and he'll, like, we're all sitting around, and we'll pull out the table and we'll sit around and we'll talk and laugh, and then he'll start asking questions, and I love it. He's a teacher now, so I love that teacher mentality. But we're not too old to learn.
Right.
I'm busy. I'm always busy. And it's time to take time. If we don't take time to listen, to hear the silence, you got to listen for the silence and what's happening in the silent moment, because they may be dealing with something they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they need someone else to talk to. So I
Right.
give them freedoms because it takes a village. I can't see everything. You can't see everything, but someone else may see something. So it's so important. I am so with you. We have to have conversations. I remember when Lance came home from college, and my son would come home and he would, sit down and we'll talk. And then one day he just pulled me to the side and we sat outside and we had a long talk. And he told me about some stuff that happened in college I had no idea of. And I was like, wow. He says, Mom, I was dealing with all that. He said, but I'm okay now. And I kind of felt some kind of way. But he had an outlet. So we have to teach them to use their resources. Their
Yes.
resources are the people that are around them, that when they're going off to school and they say, oh, call me when you need me, call me if you need anything, give me your cash app. Not just give me the cash app, give me your email, give me your phone number. Let me check in with you and see what you're doing, because they're not always going to want to talk to mom and dad. I'm
Exactly.
telling you, they're not going to want to talk to mom and dad. They're going to want to talk to someone else that they may feel a little bit more comfortable with, because I'm mom. Like, I'm not going to go and tell mom everything. I'm not going to go tell dad everything. So
Mm-hmm.
those are important, strategies that we could use for our kids to remember. Use your resources. I used to tell him all the time, use your resources. Reach out to people. You do not know what you're leaving on the table. You may be leaving a job opportunity. You may be, leaving some other resource that you may have if you want to get a house, if you want to, further your education. If you have resources that have been given to you, use them.
Well, Carla, I absolutely agree with you. That's a very sage wisdom. There is no doubt that it takes a village. And I think we all have to remember that we are role models. You
Yes.
never know who's looking up to each of us, and they are modeling what it is that we do. My day job is I'm in the property management business, and I remember asking some young kids. They were about seventh grade. Who's your role model? And they
Mm.
said, well, Mr. Claude. Well, Mr. Claude was the janitor at the apartment complex. And that's because he paid attention to them.
Mm.
He'd take the time to talk to them, and he was their role model. Well, we are all somebody's role model. And we
Yes.
have to realize that, and we have to act responsibly, and we should spend a few moments talking to a child, or our children that are not necessarily our own, to let them know that they can count on you. And if they have an issue, they could come and talk to you. And it's all about the village. We all need to be a part of the village. And together we can raise healthier kids who turn out to be a lot more prosperous than what they otherwise would have done.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be a safe place for them to come. You can't tell them, yeah, come to me if you need me. And then they come to you and then you tell all their business, tell all their secrets, and then their parents jump down on it. It has to be a safe place for them to go to, especially since we're confronted with mental illness that's not covered by health insurance.
That is true. I want to say something. You said something about um, that we're all role models. But I also want to say, for those companies, those nonprofits that are modeled as role models, you know, be sure to answer those phone calls when a parent calls and they're trying to find a resource for their child to go to, because I'm going to say there has been one or two that even myself I've called, and I'm still waiting for a call from 3 years ago. I'm just saying, it's not, you got to be on it. If that's what you're putting out there, be about it. And I'm saying that for so many reasons. I'm going to even use myself. When I was in 11th grade, my sister passed away. I was very depressed. I was going through a lot of different things. And it was my mom who allowed me freedoms. When I say freedoms, freedoms to stay home when I didn't feel right, when I didn't feel like, I was all ready for going back to school and dealing with other people asking me questions. Why wasn't I there? What happened? Those type of conversations. And it was so important that my mom gave me that freedom. It wasn't always perfect for me to stay home, but it was important for me to stay home. When I say not perfect, because I did lose some of my time in school doing schoolwork. So I had to do my exams. So I was pressed to get those things done. But in what was so important was she allowed me that space. And we have to learn to remember to allow our children that safe space. Even with my kids, I sometimes I think I overly sheltered them when certain members passed in our family,
Mm.
because I didn't want them to experience that.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you don't allow them opportunity to grieve. And I say that because I'm truly pushing for us as parents to do have that conversation, to do find a resource, whether it's an aunt, uncle, somebody out on the outside, to be able to speak to our kids that we trust, that we know that that is a safe space, that that their conversations won't be exploited and put out in the atmosphere. But we also, with the social media, I don't want social media to raise my children.
Right.
That's social
Right.
media has been doing for so long. And I'm going to say I'm so busy. Sometimes I'm not, paying attention. I don't have my phone. I'm in my phone too, just like everybody else. And it was so important, to sit down. One day I said, no phones. Everybody just sit down. I was like freaking out a little bit because I needed my phone, because I had some people needing to talk to. And I said, no, I'm not going to touch the phone, because I told them no phones. And if we're going to say it and want them to do it, we're going to have to do it too.
Yes.
And it was so important and so enlightening, because I learned some things. You're never too old to learn, even from your children, about things going on around you. It's important.
Yes, it is, and I would want to mention that there's a lot of people and kids in particular who are in pain,
Yes.
and and we perhaps could say, well, that's no big deal. You shouldn't. That situation should not cause that kind of trauma in your life. But in fact, it is, and that's how they feel. There is a national suicide hotline that people that folk can call. We never know when it has all reached a point where an individual has made the decision that they can't cope anymore. They
Right.
can't deal with it anymore, and they want to commit suicide. And that National Suicide Prevention Line is 1-800 273 8255. Now, they expect to change that in July to just 988. So,
Okay.
very shortly, 988 will be the suicide prevention hotline. And if you think that it's all too much for you, uh, talk to somebody, and they perhaps can show you another way, encourage you to look at it a little differently, because there is a lot to live for. And
Yes.
things could be tough right now, but a year from now, you'll say, man, I'm so happy that I didn't follow that dark train of thought that I was going through. And they're perhaps on a positive track today. So we want to encourage people to call, reach out if you find yourself in a difficult position, because there's somebody in the village who will help you and will help you through this tough spot in your life.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mayor, because I had to deal with that a few weeks ago, and we always say that, uh, well, we didn't see that coming. How could
Right.
they do this? I don't understand. They had so much going for them. How could they do this? And the fact of the matter is, they're in pain, and the enemy within always makes you think that you're the only one going through. But when you're in so much pain, you don't think about the aftermath of what it does to your family, what it does to your friends. You just think about yourself at that moment. It's a selfish act, but it's one that they seem that it will silence the voices in their head. It will silence the voices, and they just wanted to stop. And I encourage you to dial that number if you're feeling overwhelmed, where you feel like, I don't want to be here anymore. Because one of the things I want to say to you is, each day that you breathe in oxygen and let it out, that means that God has need of you.
That's right.
Don't rob us of who you are. Don't rob us of your smile. Don't rob us of your gift. Don't rob us of your presence. You feel that you're not important. Yes, you're important, because those of us that are there at viewing what was remnants of what you used to be are in pain because you're not here. Don't rob us of that. So don't, if you feel overwhelmed, Mayor Thurston, give that number again so that they can dial that number, reach out on Lifeline, and you don't need insurance to call this number and get help.
Absolutely. It's 800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. And I would like to add that we're all somebody else's role model.
Yes.
Eh, You may think that your life is the pits and things are bad, but there are people who look up to you. There's
Yes.
some little boy
They,
or girl
they're
who thinks that you're
expecting
the
you.
bomb.
They expect you walking through that door. They expect
Exactly.
that essence of who you are. So don't rob us of that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We need you, and you are an important part of the village. There are people who you may not be aware of it, but they look up to you. There's the way you walk, the way you talk. They want to model you. So stay with us. Let's work through those problems because together we can.
Together we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Bear Thurston, my oldest son is a principal now.
Oh,
And
fantastic!
yeah, he got into teaching because, I went through a turbulent divorce with domestic violence. And, it was very traumatic for all of my children. So when I say to you that the communication and dialoguing with each one of them, because as Carla says, they all have different personalities. You need to get into their head, get into their thoughts. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And don't dismiss what they're feeling, because what they're feeling is legitimate.
That's right.
And just, you can't say, I'll go sit down somewhere. You don't know what you're talking about. No, what they're feeling is legitimate. If I went through emotional distress, so did they. And I
Yes,
didn't know much about counseling or anything at that time. So, I leaped and grew wings on the way down and started reading books so that I could understand the process of what was going on. And, my son, I was talking with him, and he was always so angry. I mean, angry. He was a fighter. And come to find out that he was angry because he felt that it was his responsibility to protect me as the oldest son. He thought it was his responsibility to look after me and his siblings. And I told him, nobody asks you to do that or take on that weight or that responsibility. And that's where his anger and his rage came in, because he felt he was supposed to protect me. And, in saying that, I always raised them all to look after one another. I said, because of the situation I was in, I always said, look out for your brothers, look out for your sisters, because at the end of the day, you all are all you have. And that stuck with them. And they still do it today. They talk to each other almost every day because they want to know what's going on. But I'm saying that to say my son got into teaching because he said, Mom, there's kids just like me, and they don't have anybody to talk to, or they don't even feel like they are worth anything. He's doing middle school, and he said in middle school, most of the kids say they don't see no point in getting an education because they're going to be dead at 18.
Wow.
When he said that, that broke my heart. And he says, Mom, I got to do something about this. I got to do something when these kids don't think they have anything to fight for.
Dr. Val, I'm so happy that your son has made the commitment to stay in education and continue to fight to help kids. And I'm just we're very fortunate to have him in education. And I know that as I look back on my life, I think about teachers who've really made a difference for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was not a lot. They didn't take me home, but they would just say a few encouraging words,
Few encouraging words. Yeah.
and that just made a world of difference to me. And as I see those teachers today, now that I'm an adult and beyond that, a senior citizen, when I see those teachers, I thank them for what they said and what they did to help keep me on the straight and narrow. And it's another example when we talk about the village. Uh,
Yes.
it takes all of us uh, to help raise a child and to keep us as adults healthy and moving in the right direction.
I just thought of something too. When you said about middle school is a tough time for kids. I
Yeah.
really do think so. Um, there should be more, and I say more for our middle school students because mentally they're going from a child area and then going into getting to the preteen and teen time. So their minds are at a pivotal moment.
Yes.
And for mental health, I know there are little things that may be going on in the school, but maybe something that will be more engaging for them. Because if they feel like, if I'm in a mental health group and it's just like some little paper they fill out and then they go and they sit and they hear someone else talk, but they don't get a chance to actually have a conversation and then get one-on-one time, maybe that's something that we need to look into for our students, because I can just imagine being a student that may be on edge, and I'm going into this class or this session where they're teaching some things on mental health, but I'm really dealing with something. I'm a student, I'm dealing with something. And because I'm dealing with something, I don't want to express it in front of everybody.
Right.
So
Exactly.
can I get a one-on-one time? But they may be afraid to say so. So
Yes.
as a teacher or as a advocate that is teaching this mental health class or session, it is important that they take note of our students, our kids that may be dealing with something on a heavier level. And in that, I'm not saying, because I don't know, because I'm not in the educational realm, I'm not in school, but I just imagine as a student, that's important that someone sees me. I do remember dealing with something with one of my kids who was dealing with something in school, and what I found out was so crazy is the teacher would always call. This was in elementary. They would call whenever something he did bad, but when he did something good, you never heard it. You never heard the praises. And he said to me, he had went to a church and they did something about they did a session on the whole armor of God, but they use these Twizzlers and the package. And long as it was in a package, and then it was good. But then when they took it out of the package, it sunk. The Twizzler sunk in the water. And he went to school, and then they went on a field trip, and he was explaining it to one of the ladies at the facility because it kind of in line with what they were talking about. And they were praising him there, and everybody was, so good, all these different things. But when he got back to school, it was like put under the rug, like he never did anything, like he didn't get all the praises. But I heard from it from someone else on the outside. So when I got ready to go and sit down, as I'm transferring my children from one school to the other, and they asked me, I asked if I can see all their records, and I didn't. And they said, why do you want to go through the records? I said, so there's not any bias against them. I want to see what's in the record. And because I wanted to see what's in the record, she was like, well, what do you want? What should I say you're looking at the records for? I said, because I want to make sure there's no bias against my kids. So I said, well, I got to go to my car and get my glasses. When I came back, what she wrote was, so there was accuracy. I said, that's not what I said. So we got to make sure that we make them accountable as well in the schools when they're going through your kids, files, and you're trying to find out what's going on and how things are navigating, that you pay attention to the little things, because sometimes our kids will show us little things that we just we don't see because we're so busy, because it's easy to get your kids and keep going. But if you don't take the time to see the little things, we can't fix it. We can't make them aware of it, make them accountable for the things, because our kids are not always wrong. We can't say that they're lying all the time, or they're the teacher is always right. Sometimes the teacher is not right. And I'm saying that not because I'm
That's
going
true.
against the teacher. I'm saying because we have to pay attention to our kids, because something may be happening in the class. They may be being picked on by another student. The teacher has so much on their plate because they got so many students. So we have to always just think about what's going on in their minds, how they're changing. If they stop eating a certain thing, or stop going a certain way, or getting really, really silent, or being very boisterous, there are different signs always. And I am, like I said, I look for places for my kids. I'm not saying that I'm that person that can do everything, but I'm the one that's going to be the one to try to recognize when something doesn't feel right, doesn't seem right, doesn't sound right, doesn't look right.
Well,
Carla,
I
you're
appreciate you, Carla, for that because, we put a lot of emphasis and pressure on teachers, but at the end of the day, they're not superheroes.
Nope.
They're
no.
individuals just like us that are
Yep.
doing a job that has a heart and passion for our children.
Oh yeah.
So I still say that it begins in the home too.
Oh
We
yes.
don't
Oh yeah.
send our children to school as to have a babysitter, and we have to participate just like you did with your children. The teacher teaches, but we have to participate and we have to be the parent.
Yes. Let them know your name.
Yes,
They should know your
they all
name when you
know
go.
my name. They will say Miss Parker.
And they were like, "There's Miss Saunders again." That's me, and I'm here. And I'm not saying that I'm always involved in a lot of the different things in the school,
Yeah,
because again, my job sometimes is demanding.
yeah.
But I do try to find out what's happening, what's going
Show up
on.
sometimes because it's hard for parents,
Yeah,
but show up sometimes. And
sometimes.
really, at the end of the day, sometimes that's all your child needs to know that you care.
Absolutely.
You're
Absolutely.
absolutely right. There are many great teachers in our school system. I'd like to think that most of them are great teachers, but there's some teachers who bring their bias into the classroom, and it has an effect upon our kids.
Yes.
And it's up to us as parents to show up at the schools every now and then and talk to the teacher. Uh, if you're looking at a school that has a high grade, the state of Florida has discontinued giving letter grades to schools, but there were A schools and then there were schools who had lower letter grades. But one thing that was a constant if the school had a good grade, the parents were showing up to the PTA meetings. If they had a PTO meeting, there were tons of parents who were there.
Mm.
The where we have an issue is that in many minority neighborhoods, we can't go to the PTA meetings because we're working. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
it takes two jobs just to keep the rent paid and food on the table. So when they have the PTA meeting, unfortunately, many parents are just unable to get there. And that is so important to have good elected officials who help the parents in that kind of situation by keeping an eye on what's happening in the schools, um, to identify if there is a teacher who's having issues and maybe needs sensitivity training, that you can count on the elected official helping out and bringing it to the attention of the school system, where the parent may not be able to communicate it as well as they would like to. So it is the village, being involved with every kid and helping out wherever we can.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Carla, we're almost out of time, and your organization is Shyne Productions, but you also have My Sister's Keepers. Can you share with the audience more about that and how they can be connected with you?
Sure. Shyne Productions is my company. Shyne, that's Shyne Productions. We are a marketing company that deal with helping not minorities, I'm sorry, minorities too, but nonprofits. Um, any organizations that are trying to get started in marketing materials and trying to look good in these day and age where there is a lot of zooming, there's a lot of social media content that you may need to help look good for your audience and so on. But My Sister's Keeper is now an event, a conference that has went on last month on the 23rd of April. We will be doing it again on September the 17th. It is powerful. It is geared towards women, empowering, encouraging women to be better keepers of each other's heart concerns. Also, Let Us Break Bread is another or group that I deal with one of my sisters. We do prayer, we do scriptures, and we just kind of encourage each other with the word of God. Also, Sudden Moments is something that is dear to me because it is for widows. It's for those that are widows, but those that are supporters of widows, those who have stood in the gaps. That is a group, a Facebook group, basically just encouraging those that are gone through. It's a safe space. It's a safe space for you to come and talk about the things that you are feeling in your heart and concerns of, I've lost my mouth, I lost my spouse, I lost my mate, I don't know where to turn, I don't know what to do. And just kind of giving them an opportunity to speak without anybody saying, well, are you done yet? Are you done grieving yet? When you should be done. There's no limit in time on grief. Grief does not have an expiration time. It is whenever God allows you to kind of maneuver into the next, but you got to have the right support system. So I thought that was something that was important for others to have, because if you have so much in you and you can't get it out and you don't have a support system, it's good to have people that have gone through the same thing that can actually help you navigate through those things. So that is Sudden Moments. That is also on Facebook. But Shyne Productions is my baby. It is something that God gave me. All this stuff was birthed during the pandemic. I did the Life Speaker Experience, which I started before the pandemic, but then again in the pandemic. with Dr. J.R. Thicklin, Oz Newbold, and Tierney Woods. And basically, it is such a place where we speak life. We do not kill each other with our words, but we heal each other
Mm,
with our words. That is so important. It's just empowering, and different people from different aspects on different levels. Dr. Thicklin from, dealing with domestic violence, Oz Newbold with reentry back into society from being incarcerated, and Tierney Woods for mental health because she's a mental health specialist. So we all come together and we speak life, and we encourage those to speak life and not kill each other, but heal each other.
mm. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and letting us know all the things that are available, because they're definitely needed, especially with the women, because most of us are single parents in the homes, and we have to stabilize these young people that are coming up, and mental health is definitely at the top of the list. Bear
Yes.
Thurston, you have anything coming up that you want to share with the audience?
I certainly do. I am coming to the end of my 4-year term, and I'm eligible to run for an additional 2 years, which means I will have had the opportunity to serve the people of Lauderhill for 6 years. And in those last 2 years, there are projects that I'd like to finish. The voters gave us $45 million to renovate buildings in the city, to put up security walls around neighborhoods. We have purchased body cameras for our police
Awesome.
officers. So those are all things that we're doing, and we've got a couple of more projects I'd like to finish. And if and when I'm reelected on November the 8th, it'll give me the opportunity to finish those things that I've worked on. And if someone would like to assist me by making a contribution or volunteering, they can call me on my cell, 754 234 4485. 754 234 4485. And Dr. Val, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I always learn something when I sit through your program, because there were several points that I picked up tonight. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate you, Mayor Thursday, and I look forward to you serving us another 2 years in the community so that you can finish out those projects that are needed. And, I'd like to say to the audience, that are listening, even if you're not here in the city, and you want to support, you can still do so. Contributions can come from anywhere to support.
Yeah.
Nobody turns down money. So if you want to support Mayor Thurston and the work he's doing, because he's a friend to the show and he supports the soul of a woman, and Man of Purpose with Destiny by Choice with Dr. J.R. Thicklin. And if you want to connect with Dr. Thicklin, it's www.jrthicklin.com. He serves the community, and he with domestic violence, and that's what I do too. I always forget my website, but it's from thesoulawoman.com. It's from thesoulawoman.com. And the Soul of a Woman partners with a lot of community projects in the community and nationally. So you don't have to be in my community for me to support, because domestic violence is isolated, and children. I have a passion for children that are going through um, brokenness, because some of my children went through it, and thank God that they've come through it. So it does take a village, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in to Hot Topics from the Soul, and don't forget to subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul YouTube channel. We're here because you're here. Thank you again, Mayor Thurston and Carla Saunders, for joining us. And if this program has been a blessing, you can share it on all your social media platforms. Share Hot Topics from the Soul, because I'm sure it will bless someone and even maybe save someone's life. Good night and God bless. And we look forward to seeing you soon, Dr. J.